Okay, joining Jacob and me at the table, Robbin, Dailey, a citizen activist you have become now around this issue, and also Russ, Knocke, Director of Field Communications and Public Affairs at Republic Services. Of course, Republic Services, the owner of Bridgeton Landfill,
Correct.
which is right next door. So thank you for being here to both of you. Robbin, I'll start with you. We've talked a lot about the nuclear aspect of this. I just want to back up for a second. What is your biggest concern as a resident who lives how close to Westlake Landfill?
Less than half a mile.
Less than half of a mile. What is your biggest concern?
The fire hitting the rad waste. Anytime you've got fire and rad waste in the same sentence, something's not right. It just does not work. And that is my biggest concern, and that is what our biggest concern has been for a while, is that rad waste sitting there in Westlake and Bridgeton's got a fire in it.
How long have you been involved with this?
I say around 2011. The fire became rather public around 2010. And then I was involved with a class action odor nuisance lawsuit against Republic Services because of the odors coming from Bridgeton Landfill. And since that time, I've been involved ever since. And
what have those last 4 years or so been like?
It's been a roller coaster ride from HELL. We don't know when we can open our windows. If you open your windows, then pretty soon here comes a waft of it. I live in an area where there are hills and valleys, and so air has a tendency to swirl. So where you may not smell it in one part of the neighborhood, you can in the other part of the neighborhood. So we have difficulty making plans outdoors. Even a simple thing as hanging Christmas lights. My husband had to put on a respirator to hang Christmas lights. I took a picture of that and posted it to let people know this is exactly what we have to deal with every day, whether it's cutting grass, trying to enjoy the outdoors, trying to have some fresh air, so to speak, fresh air come through the window, as fresh as it can be. And it's just that our quality of life has just been taken away, I feel like.
So while the interaction with heat and nuclear material looms as a possibility, the smell is a real and present problem.
Yes, it's almost like it's a perk.
The smell is a perk on the problem.
Yes, perk to the problem. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing good coming out from that landfill. I don't care what anybody says, I totally emphatically disagree. There isn't anything good coming out of the air of it, not out of the gas flares. They're supposed to be putting out 250 tons approximately per year of SOx sulfur compounds. None of that stuff is good for you. It's not going to really kill you, but it still makes it difficult for people to breathe, it exasperates asthma. Some people have had spontaneous nosebleeds. My husband suffers from COPD, so he gets very distressed and has difficulty moving when the stench is very thick.
Russ, Robbin is just one of a fairly significant number of people who have organized around this issue. I know you've heard these issues before. I'm curious, just there are a lot of technical terms we can get into.
Sure.
Would you want to live in this area?
It's actually Spanish Village and Bridgeton. It's a phenomenal community. You know, one of the concerns we have is what this hysteria is actually doing for Bridgeton and the future of Bridgeton. At some point, with the level of hysteria that is being thrown around, you know, the notion of what could actually happen to property value is a real and fair question to ask. The notion of would other businesses want to come into Bridgeton? You know, we employ 450 people in Bridgeton, and we're proud to be a part of Bridgeton. We believe Bridgeton's brightest days are to come. But you do have to ask, when all of these allegations and all of this hysteria is thrown around, and some of it is you know, borderline fear-mongering, with all due respect. You do have to question, you know, what does that mean for Bridgeton's future? And it's you know, you asked Robbin her biggest concern. I would say at present, that's our biggest concern.
You say fear-mongering, but some of it comes from the Attorney General's office and other official capacities.
I'm glad that you bring that up. So in early September, the Attorney General had state experts that were required, based on a court schedule, to produce to Bridgeton Landfill, who the Attorney General has brought litigation against, the type of work that their experts are working on in anticipation of what Bridgeton Landfill could see in court. That trial date is currently scheduled for March. As part of that court schedule, Bridgeton Landfill is also expected by the court to do the same, to produce state expert reports, which it will do by the end of October, early November. At which point, Bridgeton Landfill will address all of the issues that the Attorney General raised. I think the expert reports that the Attorney General produced in September are fundamentally flawed in a number of ways. Happy to unpack some of those if you'd like.
Well, I think, is it fair to say that all parties can agree that there is nuclear waste and there is, whether you call it a fire or a chemical reaction or something generating heat, in close proximity to each other?
Bridgeton Landfill and Westlake Landfill are adjacent to one another. Bridgeton Landfill has an exothermic reaction that is occurring at about 200 feet of depth in the South Quarry, furthest most location from where the known radiologically impacted material is in Westlake Landfill. Yeah, we can absolutely agree on that. We could also agree on the fact that there was odor. There absolutely was odor in 2012, particularly in 2013 and 2014. I think where Robbin and I would disagree is the state of that odor today. Today, 1 in 10 odor concerns that are received simply those are found to be associated with Bridgeton Landfill generally. The other 9 out of 10 are found to be associated with other industrial facilities or the largest active landfill in the state of Missouri, which is all in that immediate area.
And the odors that can be attributed to Bridgeton, are those related to the heat underground?
That 1 in 10, yes. It's generally attributed to the reaction and more specifically site improvements, whether it's repairing a gas wellhead or doing something specific to the leachate pretreatment facility. Generally speaking, when we see that 1 in 10 odor, odor complaint that we can say, yeah, that's likely attributable to Bridgeton, it is the result of the reaction.
Okay, so you said that is your biggest concern as well, as the nuclear, the rad waste, as Robbin says, and the heat.
Actually, I said my biggest concern is the future of Bridgeton and kind of what all of this might mean for the future of Bridgeton. Bridgeton's had a rough go since the 80s, with the airport expansion, as I think, was mentioned earlier. It was hit really hard with the economy, I think particularly hard relative to other places in greater St. Louis. We are proud to be our St. Louis operation is based in Bridgeton. We operate 400 collection trucks out of there every day. We employ 450 people. We're a huge economic engine, not only in St. Louis, but particularly in Bridgeton. And when you start to have, this level of fear and anxiety that, and oftentimes the flames of that fear and anxiety is fanned, unfortunately, by rhetoric rather than science, you do have to start wondering, what does this mean? And so that's our biggest concern.
So is there something you can do to mitigate this, this heat, that might mitigate this fear and that might mitigate this rhetoric you're talking about?
Well, so we believe we're doing everything within our power, and we feel very confident when we say that Bridgeton Landfill is in a managed state. It's safe. The reaction is isolated to the South Quarry. We are obviously in ongoing litigation with the state of Missouri. The trial is scheduled currently for March. The EPA, specific to Westlake, it has authority over a Superfund site, such as Westlake Landfill. We'll have to see what schedule the EPA is on, because ultimately the EPA is going to determine what should happen, what's the best outcome for Westlake Landfill. The EPA in 2008 had proposed a remedy for what should happen. It was essentially a 5-foot layer of rock and clay, and the intention there was to keep groundwater, rain, kind of from entering into the impacted areas and sort of rolling off. And then it would also prevent any potential release of radon from going up. So it's sort of a cap. The shelf life of radon is about 3 days. And so it would kind of be, as it progresses north through that 5-foot cap, it would dissipate so that when it hit ground surface level, you would essentially have no, radionuclide, elements or molecules being released into the area.
But Jacob, you mentioned this same remedy earlier. What is the status of that? What might it take? A lot of people, and Robbin, I believe some of the groups you're associated with have called for the Army Corps of Engineers to get involved in their program that is specifically designed to remediate situations. What is the status of some sort of EPA decision to do something massive and radical? What is the status of the Army Corps getting involved? What does it take? Does it take an act of Congress for the EPA to come in and take this off of Republic's hands?
Well, the EPA says they will propose a remedy by early 2017. I think they were hoping to get it done before the Obama administration moves on and the ranks in EPA are shaken up. We'll see if they get it done by 2017. They're currently doing some more studies to try and determine whether the Bridgeton landfill the edge of the Bridgeton landfill outside of Westlake may have some radionuclides. They want to do a little more studies, a few more studies to see if some of it has spread or was dumped there originally. They also want to do more studies to better characterize what kind of waste is in Westlake. A lot of people have criticized the EPA and the records they rely on from the Department of Energy as being incomplete, as not giving a full accounting of what's actually in the landfill. So the EPA, with Republic Services, they're doing some more studies in the landfill to determine, and that could lead to a remedy being proposed by the EPA.
We have time for more studies, Robbin?
Well, before we get to that, I'd like to also address the fact that you spoke about the EPA's suggestion of the cap at the for the 2006 remedy. According to the EPA's own Office of Research and Development, they themselves said that the cap would not be protective of human or environmental health. The cap would crack. The cap would fissure and allow things to come through it.
So you want what to happen? What do you think would be the better remedy?
Well, we would like FoodSRAP to come in, clean it up, and get it out of here like they've been doing with other FoodSRAP sites.
FoodSRAP, if you can do the acronym off the top of your head.
That is the federally formerly utilized. Anyway, it's an Army Corps of Engineers program.
Action Sites.
Yeah.
So yeah, Army Corps of Engineers, that's what they've been doing for about 2 decades or so, where they come in and remove. But go ahead, I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Yes, I'm sorry, we talk with a lot of acronyms.
That's okay.
Because there's so much involved in it, it's much quicker to speak.
Well, and you've been involved in it pretty intimately,
Yes,
too.
yes. Yes, we'd like them to come in and totally excavate it and remove it. And if they deem that that is unnecessary, that they could not do it, we'll wait and deal with that when we get to that bridge. But we want it to be completely removed. Personally, we're looking for a safe and permanent solution, and that it's not going to be a cap. If it's going to be anything, it's going to be dug out, and you're going to put a liner in it. It is sitting in a porous quarry of limestone, and it sucks it up like a sponge. So we got to keep that stuff out of the groundwater. So you're going to have to excavate it, put in a liner, then go ahead and cap it, as long as we've got that groundwater protected.
If we'd have met in 2010, would you have ever dreamed you'd know this much about rad waste?
Heavens no, I never even thought about it when I moved there in 1999. I didn't even know the thing I was living next to was even there. It's been the best kept dirty secret in St. Louis for decades. And it just slowly dribs and drabs, gets out here and there. Then you get some interest for a couple of years and then it dies down. But this time we've kept at it for almost 5 years. And we're finally seeing some action and awareness with people. People have just gone absolutely berserk since they've received the letters from the schools. Rightly so. They weren't aware of it up until then. At least I gradually was eased in to this impending disaster because the fire wasn't as close when I first found out about it than what it is now. So these poor people that are just finding it out today, it's like they've been hit up alongside the head and they can't get enough information about it quick enough.
Do you ever worry that any of the rhetoric, whether it be from activist groups or elected officials, is too alarming?
It can be. It most definitely can be. I don't know what more to say about that, but it can be. Everybody receives a message differently. So we can only control the message that we deliver. We can't control what anybody else delivers.
Jacob, any more, the reaction she mentioned when the letters went home, more people seem to be aware of it. Where do you see the next few steps? What's your prediction? We have about a minute or so left. What do you see as the next step in this saga?
Well, I do think it's fair to say more people are paying attention now in the last month or so. So whether that galvanizes some action, as Russ mentioned, the trial is scheduled for March with the Attorney General. That could lead to some sort of action in the Bridgeton landfill. Other than that, I think people are waiting for the EPA to make a decision.
Russ, when it goes to court, is it corporate America where you just have to hunker down and play to win, or is there something more you could do to make people at least put them at ease a little bit?
Well, anytime I get an opportunity like this one, I accept it to come on and try to talk, with the community about an alternative perspective that's based in science. The reality is the landfill is safe. It's intensely monitored. The reaction is isolated to the South Quarry. If I could, though, briefly, we had talked a moment ago about FOOSRAP. FOOSRAP, that Army Corps program, it is a program that really falls in the category of be careful what you wish for. The federal government has funded the FOOSRAP program at $100 million a year for the last decade. There are already 22 different sites that are in the FOOSRAP program. The top 2 sites combined for their remediation work will cost $800 million. So you can do the math on how much more delay any sort of implementation at Westlake would look like if it were to transfer to the FOOSRAP program. That being said, we got no issue with the Army Corps. We work with them on the isolation barrier and all of those, all of those projects. They're wonderful to work with. Our issue isn't with the Corps. It's with the be careful what you wish for. And also, 2008, there was a proposed remedy. Robbin and some of her friends and some of the Maryland Heights activists and the Missouri Coalition for the Environment persuaded the EPA to revisit that cap. It only takes 3 to 4 years to implement the cap. We wouldn't be having this conversation today had that not happened.
This is a conversation we'll have to continue at another time because it goes even further. Thank you all, though, for bringing us up to speed. Robbin, Jacob, Russ, we thank you for your time, and thank you as well. Stay tuned until next time.